This is Tim, and this is Deconstructing Comics. Welcome to Deconstructing Comics. This is Tim in Tokyo. The past 2 weeks you've been hearing my report from Kaigai Manga Festa in Tokyo, held on November 23rd. 2 days later, on November 25th, another comics event was held, this year's iteration of Comic Art Tokyo, or CAT. My cold was still dragging me down, my mood left something to be desired, and my voice was in pretty bad shape. But at Kaigai, I'd arranged to interview one of my favorite comics creators, Bryan Lee O'Malley, at CAT, so I wasn't going to miss it. You'll hear my talk with him at the end of this episode. Many of the artists tabling at CAT were the same folks who were at Kaigai, but I did do short interviews with a couple of artists, and you'll hear those in a moment. Also, I took video of a workshop of Risograph Printing, led by Ryan Cecil Smith, Grame McNee, and Natalie Andrewson, which I hope I'll have up on our YouTube channel by the time you hear this. You'll hear a short excerpt in this episode. Also, a talk with CAT co-organizer Adam Pasion about how the event went and what lessons they learned for next year. First, just a reminder that you can help this podcast by making your Amazon purchases via deconstructingcomics.com/Amazon and make that your bookmark for future purchases. We'll then get a percentage of what you spend. It costs you nothing extra and helps us cover web hosting and the other costs of presenting this show every week. We really appreciate your support. Now, here are two creators from Artist Alley at CAT. You can see photos of them and links to their sites in the show notes.
Okay, your name is?
John Gehron.
Okay, and I know we've talked to you before at Kaigai some other year. What do you got here today?
Well, I have my new comic I just finished called Menacing Earthworks.
Okay, what's that about?
Well, it's a post-apocalyptic society, or the world. And it's about someone who's following a trail. And it just sort of came about that I became fascinated with symbols that have lost their meaning and sort of what it means to for someone to try and follow something that they're not entirely sure they understand.
Why do you suppose post-apocalyptic stuff has been so popular the past, 5-10 years? It seems like there's so many...
Yeah, it's been a while. I mean, usually when a certain genre or a certain kind of trope becomes popular, I think that there's just something in the world that sort of resonates with a lot of people, and just politically with long-standing systems failing, people are becoming disillusioned, or actually, I would say that they're probably realizing the faults that have always existed, and everything's just sort of coming to a head now, and I think people are just either seeing utopian alternatives or dystopian alternatives, and I think just given how the severity of the issues, given how so many things are collapsing, threatening to collapse, we're getting a lot of threatening messages and threatening very depressing, very troubling potential for the future. So I think people are just trying to work through those frightening possibilities for the future.
Yeah. Okay. What is your website?
My website is jlgehron.com, Gehron. That'll take you to my portfolio and my comic site.
All right, your name is?
Erica Ward.
Okay, and do you live in Tokyo, or are you visiting, or?
I do live in Tokyo. I've been here 2 years, in Japan 8 years.
Okay. And what kind of work do you do?
I work only in traditional media, so with pen and watercolor, but it's sort of a Japanese almost pop art, graphic arts look done with traditional media.
Okay, now is this comics or illustration? What is
It's illustration. I don't do any story work like a comic or a manga, but I like to think that each picture sort of tells its own story with the Japanese elements mixed in. A lot of beautiful women wearing kimono, but then with some kind of punk rock twist.
Right, yeah. Looking at these prints over here that are kind of mixtures of kind of traditional things with modern things worked into them. I'm not even sure how to describe this. It's
So this picture is like my interpretation of Kyoto, and I think when even to Japanese people, when you say Kyoto, the first thing people think of is the traditional, the temples. So I've included temples in this picture, but then there's also vending machines or matcha ice cream or sort of the more commercial side, and it's not good or bad, it's just the mix is what Kyoto is.
Yeah, and Kyoto Tower, I'm not sure if that's traditional or modern.
Exactly, but it's there, so it's in the, a bit of retro, and I like to sort of play with size and play with modern and traditional.
Cool, okay. And what is your website?
My website is ericawardart.com.
Okay, and that's Erica with a C.
With a C, yes.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
And now here's a 2-minute excerpt of the Riso Workshop, in which Ryan Cecil Smith talks about how a risograph machine works. Watch for the entire video on our YouTube channel.
So, to go over in English some of the same stuff, I mean, what I always tell people is a risograph is basically like a photocopier. It obviously looks like one, but the difference is that most photocopiers are designed, to make like one copy of something, or maybe 2 or 10 or 100. But the special thing about the risograph is, it was really designed for if you're going to print like 50 of something or 100 of something. What you're basically doing is it makes a paper stencil inside, which you can see a little bit peeling off here. When you scan, it makes a stencil, puts it on this drum, and then it's very energy efficient and cost effective to print a lot of copies. Yes, yeah, it's really ideal because it's I think for a lot of zine artists, it's really great because it makes it affordable to print, less than 1,000 copies. For most people, when you print a book, you have to start at 1,000 copies, but that can be a big investment. And also with the risograph, as you can see here, you can just switch the drums out and print another layer on something. So this is a 2-color machine. So actually, you can choose the color, do blue, and then just put the paper in again, or do 2 at a time. I think all of us have experience. You can also do 2 or 4 or 6 prints if you want. And we do that sometimes, but I think what's special about the risograph is the kind of limitation. The limit is what's really special about it. So it's fun to kill both ways. Yeah.
Okay, it's now 1 week later, and I'm talking to Adam Pasion on Skype. How's it going?
It's all right. I was able to get through the festival without getting terribly sick. Although the next day I got a little under the weather, but I'm feeling okay now. So
okay. So how did the event go overall?
By the metrics that I used to judge it, I think it went really well. Artist Alley was a huge hit in my opinion because it was exactly what the kind of festival that I want to go to as a creator. So, and then the workshops and stuff, I think, they went really well. There's things that I think we could have done better, but I think that it overall was a really good event for sure.
Well, elaborate on that a little bit about Artist Alley. What was it about it that made it the kind of convention you would like to participate in?
Well, by and large, the events that I have done here in Japan, they feel a little bit cold. I don't want to like talk bad about any other shows, but you basically come, set up your table, and sit there and try to sell books all day. And this one, I saw almost all the people getting away from their table and going and visiting other stuff because they just wanted to see what everybody else is doing. And so the kind of shows that I think are really inspiring to me are the ones where you see stuff that you're interested in and you almost want to buy more than you want to sell. You know what I mean? And I don't know. The whole purpose, the whole thought behind CAT, as I think I've told you before, is we want to create that sense of community. And so in that respect, you know, when I watch Twitter and stuff like that afterwards, all the other artists who were there said, I was so happy to make so many new friends and meet so many cool people. And that's kind of the thing we were going for. Hopefully people sold some books as well.
Yeah. So how do you feel that CAT is different from Kaigai?
Kaigai is a really interesting thing because they're kind of bridging the gap between different kinds of festivals, I think. It's a big challenge, and I applaud them for trying, because there's like the Comic-Con, the Tokyo Comic-Con, which is going on this weekend. Well, I don't know when this will air, but it's going on.
This first weekend of December. I just had no interest in going to that for a variety of reasons, but yeah.
Yeah, I feel the same way, and that satisfies its own niche, and it is what it is. And then there's the like super small indie show like what we're doing, which is more focused on indie creators and stuff. We didn't really have any major labels or anything like that there, so it's all kind of creator-owned stuff. And I think Kaigai kind of bridges that gap because there's people in Artist Alley who are from Marvel and big companies like that. And then there's kind of medium-range publishers all throughout. And then there's the, smaller publishers, smaller creators. So they kind of bridge the gap between the two. But I don't think it doesn't feel as intimate to me. And, like I said, also I think CAT has a lot more interactive programming. So Kaigai has, interesting guests come and speak, but I think CAT has, workshops and kind of more participatory kind of things. At least we try to do that. So, and in the future, we're already kind of talking about doing more of that, increasing the workshops and interactive kind of walks.
So this year you held CAT 2 days after Kaigai, and I think you told me before that the idea was that hopefully more people would come from overseas to table at both shows. Do you think that paid off, the scheduling?
Yeah, I think it was successful in that way. I mean, the TCAF people, last year when they came to CAT, it was only really Chris Butcher, the director, and his husband Andrew. So this year, he was able to bring his whole group of artists and other groups as well. Central is a publisher based in London now, but they are originally, I think, a Polish publisher, and they were able to come, I think, primarily because they could piggyback the shows. So I think there's a few groups like that. The Lakes International Comics and Art Festival from England was also able to come for the same thing. So I think there's quite a few groups that were able to come and that wouldn't have been able to do that had they not had several chances to debut stuff. So.
So different venue this year. Arts Chiyoda last year and Temple University Japan this year. So how did the new venue work out?
The venue was the one thing that I think we could have been thought out a little bit more. So the venue was great. We love Temple, and it was really good. But the fact that we separated on 2 different floors and like 4 or 5 different rooms made it a bit confusing. So, we had the first floor was all for like workshops and discussions and things like that. And we had planned to have a few different tables down there. So your podcast was going to happen. We were hoping that you were going to have a chance to interview people as they came and went, but I don't know if it went that way. And then
not really. I was just kind of trying to sell my Machigai stuff. My completely different project of mine. And I sold a book, but partly because I wasn't in a very good mood that day, and partly because I had things I wanted to do upstairs and whatever. I wasn't actually at the table all that much.
Sure, yeah. Well, we were thinking the downstairs would be less people who are trying to sell stuff and more people who are trying to represent something. So we had the Gaiman show, the like foreign manga award. People were downstairs, and then there was the table for people to browse books that were being sold upstairs. And then we had a few other tables also that were supposed to be down there, but they backed out at the last minute. So I felt that the venue, the only downfall of the way that we used the venue was that there wasn't the flow wasn't really stemmed in a way that was that got people moving through that first floor. People would come in and do the reception there, but then they would just kind of go straight upstairs.
Well, and the thing that I found, I mean, when I got there, I didn't know where to go in. And I came in just the regular door, and I completely missed that reception desk.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Because that coming from Azabujuban Station, that was the first door I came to. So, yeah, then after I was in the hall, I said, oh, I see. I was supposed to go in over there.
I think that you weren't alone on that. I think there was a few people who got confused by the place. So, it's I don't know if it's the fact of the way we used it or if it was just signage. If we would have,
if there had been a sign on the front door that said "Cat, go in over there," that would have been helpful.
Yeah, well, I think also we're thinking next year if we use Temple again, which we're hoping to do. We want to make it all on one floor, so we probably put it all upstairs, and that way people can just pop across the hallway as opposed to going downstairs and trying to find their way around. So
yeah, I think that would be better.
And upstairs, even saying that, upstairs we had the artist alley, which was kind of a big space, but then TCAF had their own room, which was separate from that, and then there was a closed room for more private. This year we had some speakers who were really great speakers, but they're kind of nervous to go in front of people. So we had some closed room discussions that were only by reservation. And then we also had some workshops next to that. And those were not as well attended as we had hoped, just because it was hard to find the rooms, I think. So, it's a learning thing. I think next year we're going to make it much more intuitive. The space will be more intuitive, hopefully. So.
Okay. So I noticed, I left about 4. I noticed on Facebook that you had ended up shutting down at 6 o'clock rather than 8 o'clock. What happened there?
Yeah, there was a big confusion. I don't know exactly I don't know how the problem started, but the closing times were written in different ways on our own website, like in Japanese and in English, and in some of our mailings to our guests and things. So somehow or other, it probably has to do with 6 o'clock being written as 18 o'clock. Maybe, I'm not sure. Somehow or other, a 1 got dropped off and it became 8 o'clock. We were originally planning on going until 6 and then having an after party from 8. But all over the website and other places, it's at 8 o'clock. So we wrapped up a little earlier than people expected, probably, but...
I see. Well, yeah, 8 seemed kind of late to me.
Yeah.
Too. So, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, what's your plan for next year then? How are you going to? How is it going to be? You talked about some ways it's going to be different next year, but
yeah. Well, I'm not sure exactly how much I can say at the moment, and also nothing is really set in stone. It's so early on, so it's quite net. But I definitely plan to chase down some kind of sponsorship that I think fits the festival. People like, people who make art supplies or people who make software, things like that, things that I think all of our artists would be interested in using. This year, Jam printer from Osaka was kind enough to come up, and Risograph, Riso Kagaku was kind enough to lend us their machine. So that was really great, because I think a lot of artists are interested in risograph printing. But So the similar kind of thing next year, things that I think suits our artists. We don't want sponsorship from, I don't even know, like Marvel or something like that. That's not what we're after.
Yeah.
So, but we want sponsors where it's a payoff for them. Like we can do workshops. We don't want just money. We want things where they can be involved, and so I don't know what that would be. Maybe a workshop with Copic markers, or maybe I don't know, Wacom tablets or something like that, where we have companies involved that can get down on the artist level. That I think we'd really like to support. And then also, like I said, making the venue more intuitive. So having it in one space, having better signage, having that. But ultimately the biggest goal, though, I think is just to make sure that we grow in a way that we don't sacrifice anything. So I want to keep getting more artists to to do the show with us without losing that indie feel that we have, I think, because that's the whole reason we're doing it, to be honest.
Do you think it will be around the same time as Kaigai again?
Yeah, I think so. It was a really good relationship that we had with them this year, and they were really supportive and helpful with us. So I'd like to continue that if we can. And like I said, it did pay off to an extent, making it much more appealing to people. So hopefully next year we can get even more artists from overseas, to come for that. Especially, this is something that a lot of people probably don't think about, but a lot of those groups come off of government grants. I think TCAF does, and the Lakes Festival from England, and several other groups come on government grants. And so if they can have, maximize the amount of exposure they give to the arts that they're bringing over, I think that's a really, I think that has a large effect on that, whether or not they can get the funding. So.
I see. Coming up, Bryan Lee O'Malley answers some lingering questions about Scott Pilgrim and Seconds, and talks about the curse words in Snotgirl. Sometimes they're censored, sometimes they're not. Is there anything he'd change about his published work? Would he ever do a straight autobio comic? And more. Thanks to our patrons, last week I released Vintage Episode 108 from December 31st, 2007, in which Mulele told my brother Paul and me about his then ongoing discussions with Kodansha Publishing. This week I'll be re-releasing Vintage Episode 107, in which Paul and I talk about the comics we made as kids. Watch for it at the end of your podcast feed, on our Facebook page, or at patreon.com/deconcomics, where you can pledge a monthly amount to keep the show going and unlock more vintage episodes. The Patreon goal we hit unlocked episodes back to number 101, so there are still 6 vintage episodes on deck to be released. You can help unlock more vintage episodes by making a pledge. Go to patreon.com/deconcomics right now and pledge at least $3 a month. We really appreciate your support. When you watched Batman as a kid, you enjoyed the colorful heroes and villains, the text sound effects on the screen, the thrill of watching a heroic crime fighter escaping from death traps and taking down bad guys. But the show was devised to interest adults, too. What did you miss as a kid? Sexual innuendo.
The penguin's too small for me.
Closeted gay characters.
I like that cape, Batman.
Freudian death traps.
Has the giant clam really swallowed Robin?
Police incompetence.
Bruce Wayne is a millionaire playboy. Hardly a secret identity for Batman.
Whether you're a kid or an adult, there's something to like about our favorite Caped Crusader. Tim and Paul dig for the deeper meanings under the Batmania every first, third, and fifth Thursday of the month. What's the podcast's name?
To the Batpoles. To the Batpoles. To the Batpoles.
Okay, we're on the sidelines of CAT, Comic Art Tokyo, with Bryan Lee O'Malley. How you doing?
Good. I just got here, but I'm doing great.
Yeah, so we were at Kaigai Manga Festa a couple of days ago, and how did that go for you?
It was good. Obviously it's a huge festival. That was like my second day in Japan, so it was a little overwhelming. but our little corner seemed to go pretty well. I met some good fans, and it was fun.
Yeah. Did it seem different in any way from ones you've done like in North America, or?
Yeah, because there's nothing like that. Like, Kaigai Manga Festa, that's just one corner of this, like, huge show, Komitia, which is, like, I guess, like, original doujinshis.
Right.
There's, like, nothing on that scale about original work, even if it's, like, kind of, it's within a certain genre and aesthetic, like, it's just really, I've never seen anything like it. So it was really cool to see.
Yeah, it's huge. Have you been in Japan before?
No, it's my first time.
Okay. So how do you feel about Japan so far?
I love it. I mean,
3 or 4 days.
Yeah, I've always wanted to come to Japan. I was a huge anime nerd when I was in high school. A lot of my friends started coming here like in their early 20s, but at the time I kept telling everyone I was waiting for some company to fly me out or something like that. I was just like, I'm gonna wait until I make it big, and then someone's gonna take me there and like show me around, and it'll be a lot better that way. Like, because when my friends like Chris Butcher came out for the first time, like they were really struggling with the language and navigation. It was pre-smartphones and all that. So now it seems like it's a lot easier. I mean, as I've experienced the last few days, it is like relatively easy to get around and to not. I know no Japanese whatsoever, so it's I don't know. I probably would have been more excited and geeking out if I was a little younger, but now I'm just sort of a professional adult, so I'm settling in. I'm enjoying it. Every direction I look is like something beautiful, so I'm enjoying that.
Okay. Now, are you still living in L.A. now?
Yeah.
Okay, and then are you doing something in Hollywood besides your comics work, or is comics work your day job now?
Yeah, I've been steadily doing comics. I haven't had a day job in a long time, to be honest. So it's it's not necessarily the best lifestyle for my brain. Like, it's not like there's no like schedule or structure to it. So you have to kind of impose it on yourself, which is sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Well, how do you go about? Sorry, this cold has screwed up my voice. How do you go about trying to structure your schedule so that you can get work done?
I don't know. It hasn't been working that well the last couple of years. Mostly, I've been writing Snotgirl the last few years, and slowly writing my own book as well. So I just basically work all the time. I'm a workaholic, so it's that's the problem. It's not working is not the problem. The problem is working all the time and never having an off switch.
Kind of hard to separate work from home.
And my studio is right beside my bedroom, so it's like where am I going to go? Like I don't leave the house for days at a time sometimes, and that's just a bad way to live. So I'm constantly trying to find a balance of like work and play and input and output, I guess.
I see. Now, I was kind of reviewing some of your past work. I just had a few kind of random questions here. Why did Ramona have 7 X's with not 5 or 8?
I don't know. It was always 7. It just sounded like the best number of villains to have. It sounded manageable. Because I wanted a story with a certain scope, and like I wanted to know that there was an end in sight. And I was like 25. I was planning it before I turned 25, but I was 25 when I did the first volume. And yeah, I wanted to do something that would kind of take the rest of my 20s, I think, on some level. And it, I finished when I was 31, so I was a little behind schedule. But I think, I just think I had to be like in that moment of my life in order to tell that story. And 7 was the right number.
Okay, because we wondered if it had something to do with Dragon Ball, since there are 7 Dragon Balls.
Yeah. I mean, it's there's 7 is like kind of a classic number of things.
Yeah.
So and 5 just didn't seem like enough. 5 is another good round number. It's not round. It's odd, but it's like I don't know what 5. I guess there's like 5 like Sentai and all that type of thing. So but for villains, it seemed like 7 was the right way to go.
Okay. Now, a few years ago, we went back and read the whole thing and did another podcast about it, another episode, and it dawned on me that Ramona fights all of Scott's exes too. Was that intentional, or just...
Yeah, I started kind of putting that in there. Especially as the story goes on, the second half especially, it becomes as much about Ramona's story as Scott's. And I like how that worked out. I like how the stories kind of came together. There's obviously there's certain loose ends and things, but I don't mind that. I think I was very happy with how it all worked out with the twin character plot lines there.
When we reviewed Seconds a few years ago, I really noticed that your character body language was really good there. You could tell a lot about the characters just by how they kind of used their bodies. How have you gone about doing that, or like looking at life? What kind of things do you look for?
Yeah. I don't know what I look for. I guess the last few years I've been working on that aspect a lot. Just trying to draw more lifelike poses, like naturalistic. Like I learned how shoulders and hips work, and how you can just say so much with the way your shoulders are slumped or whatever. Whereas in the early days I was just kind of just drawing to draw. Whatever came on my pen was the best work I could do. And sometimes it would just be accidentally a line would come out a certain way, and that would say so much about the character. So yeah, as I get older, it becomes a little more intentional, as opposed to just kind of going with it and developing what comes out of my pen naturally. I don't know if that answers the question at all.
Well, I noticed particularly the contrast in the servers. Hazel and
Yana.
Yana, yeah, because Yana looks so confident. Right. Just kind of her leg is out, kind of, and
that's true,
Hazel is her more kind of her knees are together, and she's got her hands in front of her, and looks much more reserved.
Yeah, I guess that kind of goes with the character design in that book. Yeah, it's in that book especially, I wanted all the characters to feel really different, as opposed to Scott Pilgrim, where Scott and Ramona basically look the exact same. But that was also intentional. I grew up loving Akira, by Otomo, and the two main characters in that the girl and the guy look the same, like Kaneda and what's her name, Kay. They almost have the same letter for their name too. So there's kind of a duality to it, and I think that works for the way the story goes in Scott Pilgrim as well. Since they are kind of two twin protagonists, but everyone looks the same. And then I got a lot of shit for that over the years, and I was tired of it. So in Seconds, I intentionally set out to make them all very different, physical types, different facial features, different heights, and different body language.
Okay, yeah, it really worked. Now, a few years ago, I talked to Nathan Fairbairn, and I didn't get a chance to re-listen to that. I can't remember if I asked him this or not, but there's a lot of red in the coloring in that
Seconds?
book.
Yeah.
Was that? Did you ask him to do it that way, or?
Yeah.
And
well,
why?
Seconds was not originally planned to be in color. I started Seconds before the color Scott Pilgrim started happening. And I was originally going to just it was going to be a 2-color book, because I really like the old Japanese manga printing style where they would have just the kind of reddish, orangish ink and black ink. And I really liked that look. So I initially started Seconds like that, so it was only red. So that's basically why in the final product I was keep all this red, just add more. So, and Nathan really just did such a great job. But yeah, that was, I think, he had colored the first 3 Scott Pilgrims at least, and then I made him color Seconds, and he did such a great job.
Now, is the next book going to be color?
Yes. Yeah, if it ever gets drawn, it's going to be color. Yeah, Nathan checks in on me once in a while. He's very worried.
Got any work for me?
Yeah, exactly. Well, he gets plenty of work. He's top of his game, so I think he's fine. But yeah, he just he's eager to work with me, and we have a great time working together.
Now, this is not my opinion, but on another podcast, I've heard them say that they thought that both Scott Pilgrim and Katie Clay were unlikable characters by the end of their books. I think they're just kind of human with flaws, but I don't find them...
That's my intention.
Yeah, I don't feel that they're dislikable.
Yeah, I get that a lot. And yeah, I don't understand it. I always just kind of... I'm a little quizzical about that attitude. Especially during Scott Pilgrim, I got a lot of people saying stuff like, "Oh, all these characters are unlikable. Like, I wouldn't want them to be my friends. They don't even act like friends." But it's like, have you ever had a friend? Like, all my friends, like, we just talk shit about each other all day, like, in a loving way. And, maybe I just didn't portray enough of the loving, and I just portrayed more of the shit-talking. But I'm always drawn to people who are making mistakes and just... being messed up, and it continues. Like Snotgirl, I'm still getting the same comments all the time. Like, they hate every character, so just don't read it. I mean, read something else that makes you more happy.
Yeah. Now, Snotgirl, I've had a little trouble kind of connecting with it. Maybe because it's not your art.
Yeah, but it is, and it is different, and that's intentional. Snotgirl, it's the first thing I'm just writing, and also I'm writing it to Leslie's art, so. It was inspired by the way she draws. It's her first ongoing comic, obviously. And she had barely done any comics work at all, just a few mini comics before this. So, part of it is just kind of helping her grow into the role of, like, the storyteller. And so I think it's getting a lot more focused as it goes on, because we're learning to work together better. And I think the second volume is going to, like, really surprise people.
Okay, and now we're into the second volume.
Yeah,
now,
it's going to come out in May.
The ones that are...
we're almost finished. We're working on issue 9 right now.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, because the covers... I've been buying the single issues.
Yeah, the second arc is like indigo. The first arc was kind of reddish.
Red.
The second's kind of...
Yeah, I didn't get the latest issue read yet. I read up to the previous one.
Came out a couple days ago.
Yeah, it just came out this past week. So the inspiration was what you said, her art style. I mean, is she contributing story wise? She's credited as a co-writer, I think.
Yeah. We came up with all the characters together, and we just sort of talked about the story a lot, and we still do talk about it all the time. And it is very character driven. So, we were less interested in having a plot than having fun characters, and that doesn't make everyone happy. But as it goes on, I think the plot develops more, and it is something that we both. It's very hard to separate the two of us, our work on it. And it couldn't exist without her. Like, people always ask, like, why didn't you just draw it? And I would never have come up with it, and I would never be able to draw it. So it's its own unique kind of hybrid thing. It's not. I don't think of it as like my main project, even though it kind of is right now. It's the main public-facing thing that I'm doing, but it is definitely like a weird side project for me. It's a lot of fun.
How many issues is it supposed to go, do you think?
I feel like we'll burn out by like the 30s at the most, but who knows? If it gets popular, I hope we can keep doing it. It is just it's a staggering amount of work to do a monthly comic, and then we drop back to bi-monthly because I'm still trying to work on my other book at the same time. But it's still a staggering amount of work. Like, I'm just busy all the time.
Yeah, was this the first time you've done a regular?
Yeah, I've never done
a
monthly. I've never written for someone else, and I'm also it's that Image. There's not really a lot of there's no like editorial at Image, so I'm basically our editor as well. So like she'll do work, and I'll have to kind of do notes for her and stuff. And I have to do the scheduling. I have to pay everyone. So like I'm just kind of like an office manager at the same time, which is stuff I've never done before.
Back here.
I think it's good. I like to keep busy, but sometimes I'm a little too busy.
Sure. Something kind of weird I noticed in that book is that sometimes curse words are scribbled out, and other times they're not. Why is that?
I don't know. I just enjoy messing with people. I think. At first, I started doing it just because it's kind of it's the main character's kind of worldview, where everything's kind of like scrubbed clean and everything's got to be presentable to like a general audience, which is how I approached Scott Pilgrim. Right, like my first book, Lost at Sea, is just full of swearing, and it's just like teen language. And in Scott Pilgrim, I intentionally just put it to like a PG level, where there's like maybe one swear per book. And with Snotgirl, I don't know, I just started scribbling them out. I thought it was funny, and then in the last couple of issues, I started leaving a few in because I thought that was funny, and also because people started talking about it online, and I was like, oh yeah, you like that? So and then I get really mad if I leave like a really big F word in there, and they're just so confused. I enjoy that. So, and then when we go to another character's viewpoint, maybe the swearing is going to be left in more. So I don't know. There's no rules, so I'm just doing what I feel like doing.
Okay, fair enough. So last summer I was traveling around several places in the U.S. and I did a lot of interviews for the podcast. And I don't know if you know Dylan McConis in Portland.
Oh yeah, I met her at my first Comic-Con, I think, maybe second. And she was like a teenager.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I was probably like in my early 20s, but yeah. So I've known her forever. I don't know her that well as an adult, but we did meet long, long ago.
She mentioned how it seems like a lot of graphic novels, more often than not, it seems like the ones that really get notice in like mainstream press are autobiographical ones.
I don't know why that is.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Have you thought about doing any autobio yourself? Or are you happy you're doing fiction?
No, I don't find myself interesting. Although Scott Pilgrim does have a lot of autobio aspects to it, but the character of Scott Pilgrim is nothing like me. It's just his life at the time was kind of modeled after what I was going through, or I guess it was like. I think I've said this a million times in interviews, but like, there's this Calvin and Hobbes strip where he says he's writing his autobiography, but he gave himself a chainsaw, and that's sort of how I looked at Scott Pilgrim. It's just like this kind of like action video game version of my regular mundane life. But yeah, beyond that, I don't know. I put so much of myself into the books, but I just kind of it gets all like blended up, and it's kind of like a weird dream version of reality. And that's just how I work. I don't know. I can't see myself doing autobio.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wonder why that is. That maybe it seems more serious because it's comics. Because maybe it has to do with the general idea of what comics are or who they're supposed to be for.
Yeah, but then people I've known who go do a lot of autobio memoir stuff, like. You kind of end up cannibalizing your life, or you live just so you can do comics about it. And, and I do that too to some degree. Like, my experiences are all going to go into my work, but where's the line?
Yeah.
I don't know. I've done short ones. Like, I did a short autobio for the back of Snotgirl, the first issue, about my allergy shots. And it was fun. Like, I like drawing myself, I guess. But I just don't see my life that way. I don't like process my life like kind of anecdotally. And I think I have to write graphic novels in order to even understand what I've been up to.
I see. If you could change anything you've done in any of your published books, what's the first thing you'd change?
I mean, with Scott Pilgrim, I got to do a lot of revisions when we did the color editions. So that I did get to live the dream a little bit, hopefully without going to George Lucas about it. I redrew this certain phone booth in the back of Scott Pilgrim Volume 2 that had always bothered me. It's like little things like that no one really cares about other than me. I don't know. I always say that I would never change anything, and that's kind of what Seconds was about. And so when I was doing interviews for Seconds, I think I said that a lot, that that I learned that I just have to like leave things, but it's like you never really do. I mean, I still think about how I would change things, but you can't. So I don't know. I'm not that interested in changing things. I still look at my old work way too much, more than I should probably. like whenever I'm just like, what am I gonna do? I just like take down. I have my books like right beside my desk when I'm writing, and I'm just like flip through them, and I'm like, how did I do this? And I don't know how I did it. So I just do it. It's the only way I can process anything.
Yeah. What's the best advice you've heard for new comics creators?
I don't know. I mean, the world has changed so much since I started, and since people first started asking me that question. I used to tell people to get online and get on Twitter and promote their work just however possible, but it's getting so much harder. There's so much more noise, and there's I have so many friends who like went through comic school, and then there's no jobs, there's no publishers, and I'm doing this image comic now, my first monthly, my first whatever, and I don't know, even for me, like I'm at a certain level of like notoriety where it's hard to fail with something new right now. I know that's not going to last forever, but even for me, it's like it's very tremendously difficult to get something to stick. And creatively, it's hard to make up anything new. And most of the younger people I see aren't even trying, or they don't seem to be. They're just drawing fan art of whatever is popular, Stranger Things or whatever. So I don't know. I'm completely out of advice for young people right now. Like honestly, I just don't know what to do. I hope they can find a way that I don't know of.
Yeah, things keep shifting so much.
Yeah, and it's like you have to kind of find a back door, like everyone does. There's no front door to comics.
Yeah. What can you tell us about the book that you're working on?
I mean, I can't tell you that much. I've just been struggling. It's been a couple of years, and also I've switched editors a few times, not intentionally. They keep leaving the company or leaving the department or whatever. I just started with a new editor, so basically I feel like I'm back to square one. I just have like stacks and stacks of drawings and notes, and it's all going to click into place any day now, and then it'll just like come out when it comes out.
So you have an editor already, where you're still kind of in the process of making the book. How do you work with an editor at this stage?
Not well. It depends on the editor. The new editor I have is more development focused, which is what I need right now. So I'm hoping that relationship's going to be fruitful. But yeah, it's very hard. I'm not used to working with an editor, although I always, in my head, I wanted to work with an editor. Every editor's different. You have to create kind of a relationship with them. It's like a weird little side marriage, and
you have to like talk to them. Do you talk to like before you actually draw the page? Or?
Yeah. I'm just trying to work out like the story beats and all that kind of stuff, and the editor hopefully is going to be helpful with that. But they don't know what I'm doing, and I don't know what I'm doing. I can't articulate what I'm doing, so that's the challenge. Like, I'm unable to say what I want, and then they can't help me. So it's like having a therapist, but they're not supposed to be my therapist. So I need to like separate those things.
Okay, well, I'm looking forward to seeing it when it does get finished.
Me too. Yeah, it will be good, I think, when it happens.
Bryan Lee O'Malley is at radiomaru.tumblr.com. Tell us what you think. Write us at mail@deconstructingcomics.com, Twitter @deconcomics, like our Facebook page or join our Facebook discussion group. Find all the links on the right sidebar at deconstructingcomics.com. We're also on YouTube, on the Comics Podcast Network at comicspodcasts.com, and on comicon.com, where our new episodes appear a few days before they show up anywhere else. Also, please give us a review on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, iHeartRadio, or wherever you find podcasts. We really need more listeners to give us reviews and help us stand out from the many comics podcasts that are out there. Our theme is from bensound.com. In last Thursday's Critiquing Comics, Mulele and I discussed A Brief History of Feminism by writer Antje Schrupp and artist Patu. Is it a comic? What's the problem with the lettering? Swiss women couldn't vote until when? We also talk a bit about our own experiences at Kaigai and Cat this year. That episode is right behind this one in the feed. This coming Thursday on To the Bat Polls, a look at Stanford Sherman's draft script for Pop Goes the Joker, in which we discover a few important oversights that had to be fixed for the final version. Look up To the Bat Polls wherever you find podcasts or at tothebatpolls.libsyn.com. Deconstructing Comics is taking Christmas and New Year's off. No episodes December 25th or January 1st. However, on December 28th, Critiquing Comics will feature some of the comics Mulele and I picked up at Kaigai and Cat. Till then, this is Tim, happy holidays, and thanks for listening to Deconstructing Comics.